Hey everyone, it's Alexander Robinson. Welcome to the channel and welcome back to J Ward Month. This is part 2, and in keeping with the tradition I've set for this series of double feature retro reviews, I'm now talking about a movie based off a J Ward creation that I have never seen before. Or have I? I've been told I have seen this movie before, but I have no memory of it. And the movie in question, that I have no memory of seeing at all, is The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. This movie came out in the year 2000, and it's pretty much a live-action version of J Ward's most famous creation. I say live-action, but this movie isn't really live-action in the way Scooby-Doo or Garfield was. No, this movie is taking more inspiration from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Rocky and Bullwinkle start out as cartoon characters, but their arch-nemesis, Boris, Natasha, and Fearless Leader, find their way into the real world, and this catches the attention of the FBI, who sends one of their rookie agents, Karen Sympathy, to recruit Rocky and Bullwinkle from the cartoon world into the real world to try and stop Fearless Leader, Boris, and Natasha from taking over the world. Do you ever have one of those moments where you're just minding your own business, whether it's hanging out with friends, playing video games, watching a movie, making videos, or going to a theme park, and then out of the blue, you remember something that you aren't even thinking about, you haven't thought about in years, and you go, oh crap, that's a thing that exists. That was what the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie was for me. Sometime late last year, this movie just came rushing back to my memory. I'm like, oh wow, there was a Rocky and Bullwinkle movie that was made in the year 2000 that had Robert De Niro, Jason Alexander, and Rene Russo in it. But it was weird because normally you would remember something that you've seen before, that you have a memory of, but I have no memory of seeing the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, to the point where I don't even think I ever saw this. But ever since I remembered this movie existing, I've been weirdly fascinated by it, watching clips of it, seeing episodes of the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show from the 60s, and I just thought, okay, I gotta review this movie at some point. I gotta watch it and just review it so I can get this out of my head. That's ultimately why I landed on J Ward Month for June with George of the Jungle and this movie. I actually had a very different double feature set aside for June, but the reason I decided to go with J Ward Month is because the two movies I originally had planned I have already seen before, and they were super depressing, and I did not want to revisit either of those movies. So I just decided to land on something more lighthearted and fun. So as for the Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, it's weird. I'll just get into this right off the bat. It is a weird movie. It's not good per se, but it's not as bad as I was led to believe. When this movie first came out, I didn't hear one good thing about it. I remember it coming out, and I remember it existing, but I have not heard one single positive review about it. That is until the last couple of years when some people were saying, you know what, this is actually a good adaptation of the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon, and some people even compare it to Looney Tunes Back in Action, which I'm a fan of. So I think that's why I kind of have a respect for this movie, because I rewatched some of the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show, which I remember seeing as a kid, mainly because my dad loved the old Rocky and Bullwinkle show when he was a kid. And watching them as an adult, there's so many clever in-jokes, some great writing, and just overall silly scenarios that made it enjoyable to watch. And when looking at this movie, I thought, yeah, all the stuff with Rocky and Bullwinkle, for better and for worse, is represented in this movie in a very good way. The pun machine is in full effect like it is in the show, with some really good puns and some really terrible puns. I think the way the movie opens up with this Roger Rabbit light kind of world is pretty intriguing. When you hear the words live-action Rocky and Bullwinkle, you automatically think something like Garfield or Scooby-Doo or Alvin and the Chipmunks, and that's not what this movie is at all. And I think having this be a Roger Rabbit type movie isn't a bad idea. The problem is in its execution, because this is a great idea for a Rocky and Bullwinkle movie that just gets squandered. I'm not going to say 100%, but there is a lot in this movie that is just really uncomfortable to watch. Not uncomfortable in the sense that it's offensive or it's just unpleasant, in the sense that, ooh, the execution of this is just so bad. The main thing I have to point out is with the three big names in this movie: Robert De Niro as Fearless Leader, Jason Alexander as Boris, and Rene Russo as Natasha. I'm going to start with the obvious one, Robert De Niro as Fearless Leader. There is absolutely no reason for Robert De Niro to be playing this character. I've heard either he got paid a lot of money to do this and he did it for the money, but I've also heard that this was a passion project of his, which is why he's also listed as a producer. According to IMDb, it said that he did this just for the money, which I know IMDb trivia can be kind of 50-50 when it comes to truth, so I'm just gonna say, whichever the reasoning is, it's weird to see him as Fearless Leader, and he's kind of embarrassing himself. And the same thing goes for Jason Alexander and Rene Russo, which is weird because I think Jason Alexander as Boris is actually great casting, but for some reason the execution and the way he's directed just doesn't work. And as for Rene Russo, she actually won a Razzie for Worst Supporting Actress, which nowadays I don't really care about the Razzies. I think they're a complete joke. And in her defense, there's not a lot that this role has to offer. I mean, when any actress does a really thick, corny Russian accent, the only thing you can think of is, so how's your hunt for moose and squirrel going? And this actually applies for all the actors. Even with Robert De Niro being a producer, I'm not going to blame them for embarrassing themselves in this movie because they're so awkwardly directed, and the decision to have Fearless Leader Boris and Natasha come out of the cartoon world and be live-action actors is such a bizarre one, considering that Rocky and Bullwinkle stay animated characters. Granted, they're CG characters in the real world, whereas there's this weird 2D animated weasel in the real world. Okay, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. That's another problem with the movie, is that it wants to try to be Roger Rabbit, but the rules that it sets up for how the cartoon world works and how it interacts with the real world, so there's no consistency with these rules whatsoever. And another issue I had is with the main human character that follows our animated characters. I hate to keep comparing this to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, but I have to do it in this sense to really explain why Piper Perabo is just kind of a mixed bag in this movie. When you look at Bob Hoskins in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, he is incredible. He is fantastic as Eddie Valiant, and one of the reasons why that performance works so well is because he's playing off a cartoon character, but he's playing it like he's a hard-nosed detective. He's treating his role like a real film noir. So it makes the contrast to him and Roger Rabbit that much funnier. As for Piper Perabo in this movie as Agent Karen Sympathy, there are points in this movie where I did find her to be really charming, or as the narrator describes her, idealistic, warm-hearted, and beautiful. But then there are other times in this movie where I think she is awful. Like, there are points where she's interacting with Rocky and Bullwinkle, and not only is she not looking at either character, there's one scene where she tells Bullwinkle to hurry up, and she's looking to the side. She's not looking at Bullwinkle in the eyes. But then also, there are points in the movie where she acts like she's speaking to a child. It's like she went to the Jessica Alba School of Acting. But again, much like with De Niro, Alexander, and Russo, I'm not gonna blame Piper Perabo for this performance. This director only did 2 movies, and both of them flopped, including this one. So it's very clear that the direction is just kind of all over the place. Now, to put a stop to all my criticisms, I want to shift gears and talk about the things that I actually liked about The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Like I said earlier in the review, I didn't think this movie was as bad as I was led to believe. And I legitimately think that the moments between Rocky and Bullwinkle are legitimately funny. They feel like the original cartoon from the 60s. And there are moments with the two of them and Karen Sympathy that really work. I think there's a lot of clever writing, some clever puns scattered here and there, and the music by Mark Mothersbaugh is actually really catchy. He makes good use of the Rocky and Bullwinkle theme, but the rest of the music itself I found to be really catchy and charming. There are some clever ideas in this movie, like when Bullwinkle has to get from the White House to New York City to stop Fearless Leader and save Karen and Rocky. They basically shove him into a computer since he's an animated character, and he goes surfing through the web. And again, this is early 2000s internet, so he's surfing through the web on an email, he high-fives a 2D weasel that we saw earlier in the movie, and at this point I went, oh my god, I have seen this movie before. Like, I have blacked out all memory of seeing The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, but when I was a kid, I distinctly remember an image of a CG character surfing the web and high-fiving a 2D animated character in the process. I never knew what movie it was from, but as soon as that scene happened and those two animated characters just high-fived each other, it all came rushing back. I'm like, crap. I've seen this before. I even had a conversation with my brother last week during a family reunion where I told him, yeah, do you remember when you said we've seen The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle and I was convinced that we haven't? Well, you were right. We have seen the movie. And he was like, yes, I knew it. So that was a really weird experience right there. What else do I like about the movie? Well, I like the way it opens, as I said earlier. I think all the animated segments are fantastic. I like the way the movie ends. And I also appreciate how the movie, in its attempt to be accurate to the Rocky and Bullwinkle cartoon, it doesn't rely on bodily function jokes or flat-out childish humor the same way that George of the Jungle did. Because George of the Jungle, I still like that movie, but it was clearly geared for a younger audience. Rocky and Bullwinkle did attempt to catch the same crowd that loved the original 60s show, and in some aspects of it, I think it works, but in other aspects, it really does not work, especially when it comes to the live action segments. So on the whole, this is kind of a difficult movie to rate because, again, I don't think it's particularly good, but I didn't hate it. There's a lot about it that I actually did enjoy, but there's some moments about the movie that I think are just terrible. One of the most embarrassing scenes in the movie is when Robert De Niro, as Fearless Leader, is quoting Taxi Driver. When Boris and Natasha failed to kill Moose and Squirrel, he basically goes, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?" And he's quoting Taxi Driver in that really corny German accent, and it's eye-rolling inducing to watch. So there's a lot of terrible things you have to sit through in this movie, but I ultimately think there are just as many aspects about it that can be enjoyed. So for that, I will say watch at your own risk. Would I willingly sit through this movie again? Yeah, I would. I could see myself watching this movie again. Would I give it a high recommendation and tell everyone to go see it? No, not really, because, again, there's a lot of terrible moments you have to sit through, and in comparison to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, this doesn't even come close. But I think there's some elements to admire about it. And really looking into this movie, I can see a great Rocky and Bullwinkle movie. The idea is there, but the execution is just not well done. If you liked the original cartoon, you will get some enjoyment out of this movie, but if you have no attachment to Rocky and Bullwinkle whatsoever, this isn't for you. And there you go, that's my review for The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. I hope you enjoyed it, and with that, we have come to the end of J Ward Month. We are now halfway through this series of double feature retro movie reviews, and I'm really proud of it. So for next month, I'm doing what I'm calling Patriotic Comedy Month. Since next month is July, in fact, next Thursday is the 4th of July, I decided to review two movies that are very jingoistic, but have a strong comedy element to them. And that might apply more for one movie than it does the other. But anyway, the movies that I have picked are Team America World Police, because that movie came out 20 years ago, and I remember laughing non-stop when I first saw it. And then the second movie will be Steven Spielberg's 1941. This is the movie that he made right between Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I have heard very mixed things about this one, but I am super curious to see it for myself. So I hope you tune in for these two reviews starting on July 10th, and I also want to give a special shout out to my YouTube members right here in the starter pack. If you want to get early access to all of my reviews a day before they come out, and the ability to help out this channel and grow the level of perks and tiers that I can create for members, then you can get a YouTube membership right here and help grow this channel even more. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I want to know what you guys think about the adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Whatever your opinions are, let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell button to get notifications. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Letterboxd, Threads, and my theme park and travel channel right here on YouTube. I'll see you guys in the next video, but until then, have a good day and take care of yourselves.